Good afternoon, everyone, and I am sorry I'm late, but I had a bill in another committee that I had to give myself, so it's just one of those days. We are going to start with Morgan this afternoon. Kelly Norton is our budget analyst, and Dr. Wilson is here.
Okay, we're going to start on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2017 to 2022. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 575 students from fall 2021 to 2022. As is illustrated in the exhibit, first-time full-time students experienced a decline of 4.1% after the historic enrollment in fall 2021, yet the population still remains higher than pre-2021 enrollment numbers. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As illustrated in the exhibit, the number of applications grew tremendously in fiscal 2022, totaling over 16,845. The yield rate of 15.4%, which is the number of students who actually enrolled from that total, was the lowest rate recorded from fiscal 2012 through 2022. The acceptance rate of 85% was also the second highest rate recorded over this period. DLS asked the president to discuss the retention strategies in place to ensure that the recent large cohorts academically persist at the university and what has led to the recent increase in the acceptance rate. Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides a breakdown of enrollment trends by location. Continuing to reverse the trend of declining enrollment, in-state enrollment grew by 121 students in 2022. The international undergraduate student population has fallen from the 2017 high mark of 780 students to 153 in 2022. The out-of-state student population continues to increase, growing by 465 students in 2022. Out-of-state students now make up more than 38% of undergraduate enrollment at the university. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time full-time students. The second year retention rate had fallen in 2017 and 2018, but rebounded in 2019, totaling 73.5%. The second year retention rate dropped to 70% for the 2020 cohort. The third year retention rate reverses its steady decline and increased to 61% for the 2019 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 4-year graduation rate held steady at 21.8% for the 2016 and 2017 cohorts. The 6-year graduation rate decreased slightly to 0.9 percentage points, but is still the second highest in this period. Exhibit 6 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Both non-Pell and Pell recipient full-time transfer students were more likely to graduate within 8 years than first-time, full-time, and part-time transfer Pell and non-Pell recipient students. Pell and non-Pell eligible part-time transfer students graduated at the lowest rates. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2019 through 2021. This exhibit shows the average cost of attendance over these years was $24,447. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $16,272. In fiscal 2021, the average net price was $9,300 less than the cost of attendance. What this exhibit also shows is that the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2021, it cost a student $12,349 with a family income of under $30,000, but $19,494 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 8 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased $11.6 million between fiscal 2017 through 2022. Need-based aid totaled $19.3 million alone in fiscal 22, which was the result of Morgan's financial aid optimization model. U.S. Department of Education began reporting the median debt for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 9 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just over $21,000 for accounting and civil engineering majors to $31,000 for psychology, business, and liberal arts majors. Registered nurses had the highest median earnings at $79,390. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 10 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 22 through 23. The largest dollar change was in instruction, which increased by $11.7 million, and spending on research also increased substantially, growing by $11.4 million. Moving to the federal stimulus funds, Exhibit 11 on page 16 provides an overall summary of the total funds that were allocated to Morgan through the various Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund or HERF stimulus programs. In total, Morgan has received over $128 million in federal stimulus funds, of which 26.8 million was required to go directly to students in the form of emergency financial aid payments. Exhibit 12 on page 17 provides the overall distribution of allocated and planned HERF spending by Morgan from fiscal 2020 through 2023. Morgan has until June 30th to expend $27.8 million in ARPA funds. The funding will be used for air quality improvements in buildings, firewall protections for remote learning, and emergency financial aid. The proposed fiscal 2024 budget found in Exhibit 13 on page 17 includes a general fund increase of $21.6 million, $4.5 million in cost of living and merit increases, and $26.4 million in Chapter 41 of 2021 funds. In total, when excluding state pay-go funds, Morgan's total state fund allocation increases by $36.4 million or 23.3% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2023 working appropriation. The items identified to be funded with the increased fundings are shown on page 18. Exhibit 14 on page 19 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratios for these levels remain roughly stable from 2018 through 2022. In fiscal 2024, the state funds account for 45% of unrestricted funds. Morgan anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow substantially, increasing to $350 million in the 2024 allowance. The personnel data for the university is found on page 20, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2022, the university had over 109.5 positions vacant above the expected turnover amount, which can be attributed to the creation of 192 new positions in fiscal 2023. DLS asked the president to comment on the new positions and the progress being made to fill them. Moving to issues, which begins on page 21, the first issue covers the Maryland College of Osteopathic Medicine at Morgan. The medical school has begun the approval process with the Maryland Higher Education Commission for degree granting institutions in Maryland. MD-Com will be a private for-profit medical school operating at a public university. MD-Com anticipates charging $55,000 in tuition and fees for a total of $220,000 for a 4-year program. Exhibit 15 on page 22 shows the 4-year median cost of medical schools in the academic year 2021 through 2022 for allopathic and osteopathic schools. Osteopathic school awards DOs and has a more holistic style of medical training. And the more common medical school is the allopathic school, which awards MDs. As you can see, private medical schools have higher median costs. High college costs inevitably lead to student debt. Exhibit 16 on page 23 shows the median debt of U.S. medical graduates in fiscal 2021. Graduates at private colleges had higher rates of median debt. Due to its presence at Morgan, MDCOM will likely have a high concentration of Black students, a population that has higher rates of school debt. The average Black college graduate owes $52,726 compared to the average white college graduate with $28,006. In calendar 2019, 74.7% of student loans held by Black graduates exceeded the original loan amount. And Black medical students have higher rates of student debt at 91% and a higher median debt of $230,000 than other racial groups. In addition to the likelihood of high debt due to its status as a new college, MDCOM will not achieve accreditation until its first class graduates, leaving those students without the ability to receive federal school loans and rely on private loans. DLS asks the president to address what efforts, if any, will be taken not to burden students with higher than necessary student debt, particularly students who enroll before accreditation. The second issue is on page 24 and covers the most recent Office of Legislative Audit's fiscal compliance report. There were 4 repeat findings. There was finding 1, the MSU or Morgan did not adequately monitor the vendor responsible for dispersing student refunds to ensure the refunds were properly issued and unissued refunds were returned. Finding 2, Morgan did not independently verify the propriety of adjustments to student room and board charges, certain of which were not processed in accordance with Morgan's policy. And finding 7, Morgan did not procure certain goods and services in accordance with its policies and procedures. It did not ensure related goods and services were received and amounts invoiced were proper. DLS is asking for the president to comment on what actions have been taken to address the findings of the audit report and to specifically comment on what actions have been taken with regards to the audit's repeat findings and recommendations. The DLS operating budget recommended actions are found on page 27. We're asking to add budget bill language restricting funds until the Office of Legislative Audit submits a report indicating that corrective action has been taken to satisfactorily address the repeat findings contained in the audit report, and requesting committee narrative, requesting a report on the new Center for Elimination of Educational Disparities. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Before we go any farther, I have to welcome Joan Carter Conway to our panel today. It is wonderful to see you. I always know when Morgan's coming up, we have a chance of having a special guest, so.
You're so kind.
Absolutely. Well, they're all special guests, I should say. Anyway, we have Dr. Wilson with us today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair King, and to members of the subcommittee. It's indeed always an honor to come and give you an update on the progress that we are making at Morgan to continually elevate our university. I would like to introduce other colleagues who are here with me.
Okay.
To my extreme left is Dr. Don Terry-Veal, who is my Vice President for State and Federal Relations. Next is Mr. Sidney Evans, who is our Executive Vice President and Chief Finance Officer. And then, of course, Senator Joan Carter Conway, who is here on my right. I want to also thank Ms. Kelly Norton for the outstanding job that she has done in looking in on our operations at Morgan and bringing forward the analysis that she has brought forward. And so with that in mind, Madam Chair, we have done as we always do every year, prepared a very comprehensive written report, and I am not going to read that to you. I just want to make a few kind of highlights from where we are at Morgan, and then go directly to succinctly address the recommendations made by the analysts. Having said that, we certainly thank the state legislature. We thank Governor Moore and the administration for the investments that are being made in higher education in the state, and particularly in Morgan. We are going through a period at Morgan of immense transformation. I often say that I have been a student of history at Morgan in my 12 years, and I honor that history. The period we are in right now, I think, is one of the most transformational periods in the history of the institution. And it is because of the investments being made at the institution and then our giving back to the state a return on those investments. We are at historic highs all over the place in Morgan. We are at an historic high in terms of total enrollment. Officially, we reported to MHEC on October 15th, 9,101 students. But even though we reported that as our official number, we had to, as of October 15th, we still have about 300 to 400 students that we work with to ensure that we don't have to send them home. And so our unofficial enrollment at Morgan in the fall exceeded 9,300 students or so. We also have experienced an era of the highest graduation rates at the university, 12 straight years of retention rates above 70%. Those two metrics alone have resulted in Morgan receiving 4 national awards in American higher education for college completion, especially given some of the demographics that we see in our student population and our ability to work with those students and provide them with the appropriate kind of support network they need to get them across the finish line. We have closed the window on our first 10-year strategic shared vision at Morgan. That was Growing the Future, Leading the World, 2010 to 2021. And we have opened the window on the next 7 years, Transformation Morgan 2030, Leading the Future. And Madam Chair and committee members, on page 2, you can see that we don't have a laundry list of goals over the next 6 to 7 years. It's only 6 strategic goals. And we start at Morgan, as every institution should, by focusing on student success and well-being. And we instituted well-being this time around because of the tremendous trauma that so many of our students have experienced as a result of about 3 things. Number one was the incredible social unrest that our students have been experiencing now for several years that reached its apex with the taking of the life of Mr. George Floyd. And that happened in the middle of a pandemic where those students had been not able to stay in school. They were in homes where many of their relatives had lost their jobs. And basically, some of those students became homeless. And then all of a sudden, come fall of 2021, as they began to come back to our campuses, they are coming back with a real desire for universities to put in place the kind of services to minister to their well-being. And so that is priority number 1 for us. Number 2 is we have an amazing faculty at Morgan. And as I often say, I think it is the most diverse faculty in our great state of Maryland, certainly one of the most diverse in the country. About 50% of our faculty is African American, but 50% are not, including about 25 to 26% that are white, about 5% that are Latinx, and about 10% that are international. And so they do come from all over the world and are of every race and ethnicity. They come believing in the mission of the institution and believing in the work that they do to pull out of our students the brilliance that so many of them are not even cognizant that they possess. And so we want to, in the next 7 years, begin to intentionally put in place programs and initiatives to elevate and to invest in the incredible faculty at Morgan, even more than we have done in the past. And then, of course, you've been
quick question.
Yes.
Because I run into a lot of students in my area that seem to have the same problem. If a student comes from a family that has not had a family member that has gone to college, that has no idea how to get registered, pick classes, get started, do you have people that kind of take them by the hand and steer them in the right direction?
Yes, we do. And it's called intrusive advising and intrusive caring.
Yeah.
And quite simply, it works as follows. A student coming in has an automatic hold on their account until they see an advisor.
Okay.
And that advisor will work with them in selecting their courses, making sure they are selecting the right courses, making sure they are selecting courses that will render them full-time, where they have a reasonable chance of graduating in 4 years, no more than 6 years. And that whole is not taken off of their account until the end of their freshman year. And that is with that in mind. And Chair King, you heard me say this before. That was me. You know, my father was illiterate. And my first 5 brothers were illiterate. We grew up in abject poverty in Alabama, and no one in my entire family, even extended family, had ever gone to college. And so we do have several members of our faculty and administration who are just like me. And so since I'm just like at least 25% of my students who have never gone to college, there's no way as president that we are not going to put in place those kinds of things that were in place when I went to college that enabled me to be successful.
Good. I hear from so many kids that just, they've started out going through school with their parents saying, there is no way you're ever going to afford to go to college or you're ever going to get to college. So all of a sudden it's there and they need somebody to just one person to stick their hand out and help them. And these kids can do it. I know they can do it. So good. Glad that's there.
Thank you. And I'll just speed up through the rest of this. We have been really talking about moving forward in our research ascendancy as well. And so when I came on board, Morgan was a moderate research university, and in the Carnegie vernacular, that's R3. And we had as a goal over the last 10 years to raise our research status to R2, high research. We achieved that in 2018. And we think now we are ready to go to the highest level of research, which is very high research, R1. And we want to go there and be true to what the state has asked of us as its preeminent public urban research university. We want to tackle the research questions that we know are not being addressed in a kind of comprehensive way that is dealing with marginalized communities, urbanized spaces, and equitable issues as well. And so we're looking at health issues, educational disparities, what's happening in STEM with regard to the lack of diverse participation in the fields, and how do we learn from that? What's happening in the area of crime, and how Morgan can produce evidence-based research studies that will be placed in the hand of decision makers. So we have a comprehensive kind of evidence-based approach to how to eliminate or reduce violence the way we're seeing as well. And so when we get to the top floor of the research house, we've said we have no intent of just being like anyone else, with a complete understanding of the brilliance of those institutions that are there, including, of course, private institution Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland College Park. And then as of February last year, UMBC. Our desire is not to replicate anything that they're doing, but to be very, very different. And we are very excited about this as well. We are also are continuing to tackle issues of infrastructure. This has been a challenge for our institution for decades. And we are so appreciative of the advocacy on the part of this committee in enabling us to get more dollars for infrastructure. And some of the audit findings are related to just our ability to reach back and try and clean up things, and at the same time put in place the kind of things that will not require cleanup going forward. And then last, we raised our hands and said, Morgan is in Baltimore City, and we have no intent ever to leave this city. And as such, we have to become so intertwined with the future of Baltimore as this anchor institution. And so we want to be to the city of Baltimore what institutions like Temple University is to Philadelphia, what Georgia State is to Atlanta, what the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee is to Milwaukee, what Wayne State is to Detroit. So when you look at cities like our city, you will be hard pressed to find a city that at least is thriving, on the cusp of thriving, without having this comprehensive public, very high research institution in the city limits. And that's what we are striving to do. And so moving right along, we also have a student population now that is winning on the world stage. They're entering all of these national contests and are competing with the very best of them. We outlined this in our testimony. We have students that have come in at the top in contests like the Goldman Sachs Market Madness competition, the Amazon Web Services competition, the Zillow competition across the nation, looking at how individuals can buy homes and not be gouged by mortgage rates and come up with a different strategy. The bottom line is that our students at Morgan are winning on the world stage. And likewise, our faculty as well. We have faculty who are winning awards in innovation. They are being selected for induction into these national societies and national associations. And as I indicated on yesterday, even I was astounded to receive notification that this past year, I was elected to be inducted into the National Academy of Arts and Sciences, and that official induction will take place later this year in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thank you, Senator Benson. Yes, and so our faculty are out there and they are doing some amazing things. We continue to make history at Morgan in areas that are somewhat unique to the nation. This past year, I was very excited to appoint as our first Vice President and Director of Athletics, Miss Dina Freeman Patton. She's a Baltimore native and played basketball at Lake Clifton High School and went on and played collegiate basketball and was the AD at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And she has become the first woman AD in Morgan's history and one of the few woman ADs at a Division I institution in the nation. And so we're very, very pleased with that as well. As we move through this first phase, naturally with the incredible growth that we are experiencing at the institution, we are going through a few growing pains. These are good growing pains because so many other institutions are losing enrollments, but the Morgan brand has really been elevated. And as such, there's a huge demand now on the part of students to want to stay on campus or at least within a block of Morgan. And I think we all know why historically there has not been the kind of development around Morgan as we have seen around some of our other institutions in the state. And that it seems now to be correcting itself as we've had interest on the part of private developers now who want to come out and build apartment style residential facilities. But it's going to be a few years before that happens. And so as such, we have had to figure out how can we bring into existence housing on the campus where it's not going to render our students unable to pay because the state doesn't provide that kind of support. And so we're going through a period now where we are adding over the next several years about 1,800 new beds to the campus through a public-private ventureship. And so the analyst has asked us to respond to several questions to comment. And the first is to discuss the retention strategies in place to ensure that the recent large cohorts that we have attracted, if you will continue to persist at the university. And I just want to say this for the record, because the analyst did indicate that we were accepting that the fall of 2022, we accepted 85% of the students who applied to the institution. And I wanted to know, well, how does that compare with the other public institutions in the state? And I can share that I went on the website of MHAC and fall of 2022, UMBC accepted 81% of all the students that applied there. Towson accepted 71% of all the students that applied to Towson. Salisbury accepted 91% of all the students. Bowie, 86%. Frostburg, 88%. UMES, 86%. And of course, College Park, 36%. And what we are seeing, I only did that because I did not want the committee to think that, Morgan is out here on his own, and that's why you're growing. No, even though we are right there lower than some of these other places, we are still growing. But higher education in the country now has moved, let me see, 78% of all four-year institutions in the country have moved beyond this kind of standardized test score, and therefore you're in. It's a more comprehensive assessment of the student's readiness for college and the likelihood that they will be successful. And that's why you're seeing, if you will, these kind of higher acceptance rates across American higher education. It has nothing to do uniquely with Morgan or any other institution. And so with that in mind, we do have in place programs, bridge programs, summer programs. We have a program in engineering that we think is a model for the nation, where students come for 6 weeks. It's called the PACE program. They get a jump start on what it means to be an electrical engineer or a civil engineer, an industrial engineer. And those students come fall, they are ready and they can move through that curriculum. And that's why we are #1 in the state and #1 in the US in producing Black electrical engineers, civil engineers, and industrial engineers.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember, it doesn't seem like it very many years ago, it probably is, where we were talking about online courses and how that was going to affect the university system and everything. Do you have many online courses?
Yes, we do. We have hybrid courses as well, where during COVID, of course, we learned some things during COVID, and we retrofitted about 200 or so classrooms in such a way that we could actually offer those classes in a hybrid way, where students could actually sit in the classroom, but then other students could stay home or stay in their residential dorm and actually take those classes as well online.
Yeah.
And so we do see that happening, and we do see quite a few students who also want to have that option.
Right. It just seems like it's so much easier, especially for the older students that have kids or have jobs and all the rest that goes with it, for them to be able to take those courses when they can and still be able to have jobs and do all the rest. So I would not want to see just University of Maryland Global Campus being the only one that attracts students to courses like that. It needs to be all over.
Yes, and we actually just brought online last year a new college called the College of Interdisciplinary and Continuing Studies.
Mhm.
We're offering 18 new degrees through that college, and we are going intentionally after a market in the United States and in Maryland called some college, no degree.
Mhm.
In the nation, there's about 40 million people who have some college, no degree. And they've had a hard time figuring out how to go back to a school that will accept so many of the credits that they have earned across several institutions. At Morgan, we have 8 degrees now going after this market between 25 years old and older. And they can transfer in up to 90 credits. We will give them also credit for prior learning. It's an effort, and in Maryland, it's like 700,000 individuals who have some college and no degree. And what we've found is that the overwhelming majority of individuals in Maryland and across the nation who have some college and no degree, if they want to go back, they don't go back to the school where they started. And so having another option for them would be more attractive than if I started at Morgan and whatever happened to me, I left. They may be less likely to come back to Morgan versus going someplace else. Whereas they started someplace else and now Morgan has that option, they would be more likely to come to Morgan and to finish what they started someplace else.
Well, I'll tell you, I think things at Morgan are just doing great, and I am so glad you're there. I just think you do a great job.
Thank you, awfully kind, Madam Chair. Yeah. And so let me just run through the rest of these here. In terms of new positions, faculty members being recruited on a different kind of cycle. And so it takes a little long to fill a faculty position than it would be a staff position. Faculty members across the country will not leave their current faculty position in the middle of a semester to take on another position. So it typically takes about a year. And that's what you're seeing here is the lag time. And we expect to have many of these positions filled by the middle of FY24.
Okay.
And then you asked me to comment on the medical school, and there is in the testimony where we're doing everything we can with this for-profit model to try and lower the cost, but given inflation and given the fact that it is a for-profit model, that is very, very difficult. And so while we are trying to identify philanthropic support to try and drive down the cost of the tuition, that is proven to be very, very difficult. And so what I have said here is that I certainly will be urging DBM to consider making the medical college at Morgan a public medical school. And as such, we think that would drive down the tuition substantially.
Mhm.
It will enable the market that we want to attract to be able to get through that school without, the $200,000 or so in tuition. And then this discrepancy here of whites who have come through medical school with a loan that I think the analyst said of 28,000 versus blacks at 53,000. We had to figure out a way to reduce that, else we're not going to have many black physicians as primary and family care physicians. And so that's what we kind of put out as our response there. And so the last is the findings of the audit. All I can say here is we have 4 repeat findings with regard to the first repeat finding. That is a repeat finding for all of public higher education in Maryland. And it has to do with something called the SOC 2 report, where we have these vendors who we give data to give our students refunds. And they're just very, very difficult to move to bring them in compliance with what the OLA, and OLA is doing what OLA should do, is asking all of higher ed to do. And so I have had a conversation with Chancellor Pearman because the system has the same finding, and this is a repeat finding as well, as to whether if we collectively came together across the system, St. Mary's and Morgan, we may get some traction with the vendors there, but this is not unique to Morgan State University. And with regard to the independent review of the room and board adjustments, we have made those adjustments already, and the documentation is there to show that. And our internal auditors as well are reviewing that and approving the justification. The residency status here, this one has been kind of tricky for us, but we think we have clarity now, and we'll be able to completely close this one in 30 days. So here's what's happening here, is that students go online and they apply to be admitted to Morgan, and there's an application online, and then there's like a 6-part question there, right? And they have to answer that, check the 6 part. And so invariably we get students, a large number of students, who check the wrong thing. And when they do that and we accept them, our default position is that we accept them as an out-of-state student, even though 80%, 90% of those students might be from the state of Maryland. So then they have to, when they get their admissions letter and it says, okay, you're accepted as an out-of-state student, this is your tuition, they have to then come and physically show the evidence to change that from being an out-of-state back to in-state. And so what OLA is saying is that, okay, so you have whatever, 600 changes. This person approved it, but then who approved what that person approved? All right, so the last time around, we hired someone to come in and do the second layer of approval.
I think they call that bureaucracy.
No, no, segregation of duties but we don't know. We're getting guidance now as to do we have to go and hire another person to approve what the person we hired to approve has approved? And that's what's at issue here. And we think we have clarity. We will make our way through this, and this should be addressed in 30 days. And the final is has to do with deferred payments. Madam Chair, is my last comment. And we have a state statute that I believe is at least 50 years old. It's quite old. And it says that it has a $250 limit as to what a student can carry forward in the second semester. Otherwise, the institution cannot, without some kind of deferred payment plan, allow that student to register. My view on this is that this is so out of step with the way students go to college today, that we need to, as a state, either raise that substantially, or we need to eliminate it, because otherwise it is disproportionately impacting the students who can least afford to clear up their entire bill down to $250 by the end of the semester. But the university is placed in a position where if you don't, we have to drop you. And then therefore our graduation rates are 35. And it's like, what's happening here? Because you put us in this position where we can't even take 6 more weeks and work with these students. And they may finally clear in November, but we should have denied them an opportunity to stay on at the institution. So we will, until we get clarity on this, we will move forward and we will work with the Central Collections Unit to see how we at Morgan, with a very high percent of first-generation college-going students, can satisfy this $250 limit without having to send so many of our students away from the institution without getting their degrees. And so
I'm just finding so many more students, and I've changed completely. I probably said this to you before. I've changed how I do scholarships because, you know, years ago, not that many years ago, I could give a student $1,000 and they'd be thrilled with it for the next year coming up. Now I have so many kids that just give it back to me and say, that doesn't even get me community college. It doesn't get me anywhere. We just have kids in a completely different financial situation. And if we want them to survive and to thrive in school, we have to change how we do things and make it easier for them.
I totally agree, Madam Chair. I think a little bit more flexibility should be given to the campuses, especially given our emphasis now on ensuring that a larger swath of our state's population will get the skills that they need at the college level to enable the state to be competitive long-term. We won't get there if we have in place these kinds of statutory limits that is preventing us from reaching that population. And so with the recommendations, the president agrees with recommendation number 1, and we agree with recommendation number 2.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Senator Benson, no?
I really want to just tell everyone how glad I am to see this wonderful senator sitting here today. Joan
It's a treat.
Carter Conway
Mhm.
is deeply and sorely loved and missed from being down here. The work.
And there is another life besides being here.
The work that this wonderful woman did down here cannot even be given a price tag. She and Delegate Rudy Kane were the ones who started the movement to ensure that funding was given to historical Black colleges and universities. It was all about parity and equity. And I cannot tell you all the number of hours and days that this wonderful woman spent working down here to ensure that we stayed focused and accomplished the task. And I tell people all the time that had it probably not been one for the hard work of Delegate Joan Carter Conway, I'm not so sure that we would be where we are today when it comes to the funding of historical Black colleges and universities. I could go on and on talking about this wonderful woman.
Yes, you could.
But you have good sense.
Thank you.
At Morgan State University to utilize her expertise because she understands how things are done down here, but she also understands what it takes for Baltimore City itself to succeed. And I want her to know publicly how much I love her and respect her. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, we love you too. And all your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
What? Okay.
Mental health is a huge problem with our students and families here in the state of Maryland. And I know it's very prevalent at Bowie State University, where I had a conversation the other day with the president of Bowie State. They are coming up with a mental health center, but it is very critical because we're talking about suicides and we're talking about all of the factors that contribute to mental health. Can you comment just a little bit about what we're doing when it comes to the mental health of those students that they're on the campus?
First of all, this is one of the things that keeps me up at night, sometimes all night. Over the last 2 years, I've seen behaviors in Morgan students that I have not seen in my entire tenure. They are off the chart. And I think we're seeing a lot of this across the space, and my colleague at Bowie, I'm sure, is seeing the same thing. And so the first thing we had to do during COVID, our students were so stressed that we worked with the provost and the faculty to institute wellness days, just to give them a break. And so we instituted 4 just wellness days, and the faculty signed on and basically agreed that during that day, they would basically not have assignments, and they were just to go and decompress. And that worked so well. It was just amazing. Then we introduced into the curriculum a course on mindfulness, just to introduce to the students a way of ministering to their own psychological, emotional health. And the minute we opened that course up, if it swelled to like 90 students almost overnight. And so that course now is still running at Morgan. And then through the assistance of Mr. Evans, we identified funding to increase our counseling center staff, our well-being center staff. And what we're finding in this space, believe it or not, is that it is so difficult to recruit counselors who are therapists because the supply is not sufficient to meet the demand. And so therefore the salaries have increased substantially. Each time we would come to the end of a search for 2 people, we would lose the 2 people because we would be outbid for their services. But we have been successful in embellishing our counseling staff. And that's so, and we have also procured a teller counseling service to be available to students 24/7. And this is still growing as well, Senator Benson.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much. Senator Bailey, thank you.
Okay, next we have the MSDE headquarters. Oh, I'm sorry. I have 2 witnesses before we do that. I have Jeannie Gunthrop. Wait a minute, I switched already. I have Michael Stewart with ASME and Jerron McCall with ASME. Come on up.
Good job. You can see it.
Okay, we have another full presentation here after this, so if we could do like 3 minutes apiece.
Members of the committee, how you doing? My name is actually James Hollenbeck Jr. Mike couldn't make it today.
Okay,
I issue. I've worked here at Morgan for over 3 years. I'm a proud member of AFME, Local 1885. Over the last 5 years, we have made it real strides here at Morgan. We work with administration under Dr. Wilson, leadership to eliminate contractual employees and hourly staff. Raise the minimum wage to 15 hours and seeing significant increases in enrollment. However, we remain concerned about a number of outstanding issues that remain unresolved. First and foremost, as part of Morgan's expansion, it has taken a path towards privatizing public works or services. The newest dorm on campus are private, are not operated or maintained by public employees. The new medical school will be completely private with no public employees. We heard from management that they had designs on privatizing our power and heating plant on campus. And a significant amount of security officers on campus remain privatized, such as firms as Allied and others. We cannot and should not allow public institutions who this General Assembly funds by the tens of millions to leverage public dollars just to privatize public works. We hope the committee and the General Assembly take a deeper look in contracting out transparency of these outsourcing contracts and work with AFME to take further actions. So I want to thank this committee for a long time support of AFME and our members, and thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jerron Mackel, and I'm a 30-year employee at Morgan State University. And the reason I get up every day and go to Morgan State University is because I believe in the administration and in the mission. There's a renaissance going on at Morgan State University right now. The employees, the students, and even the members of the community, everyone is energized and revitalized, and they know that something magical is happening here at Morgan State University, and they all want to be a part of it. I want to echo my colleagues, Mr. Holliday's praise for Morgan and the progress that we've made as it relates to the labor relations issues. But one of the biggest things that concerns me right now is that we've been locked in negotiations since the pandemic. And it's been a long time that we've been at this table trying to resolve this contract. Some of the things that are sticklers right now is health and safety, vacancies, and wages. And like all public employees who worked straight through the pandemic, many of us got sick, including myself. Morgan did an outstanding job being proactive in their approach to protect us and keep us safe and secure during the pandemic. I salute Dr. Wilson and his administration and his team for coming together and pulling us through those unparalleled times. The fact is, Morgan isn't alone when it comes to not signing off on these health and safety issues. The USM schools have also refused, and that's why we're seeking help as it relates to Senate Bill 218 to help that we would get binding arbitration. Right? I want to, at this time, make it perfectly clear, make no mistake about it, that despite the challenges that exist between the parties, I fully support Morgan's request for funding for their capital and operational fundings. And I would recommend that, to me, I would add an additional $5, $10, $15, $20 million investment into the vision and administration at Morgan, because great things are happening over there. We're going to resolve our issues over there, but we believe in Morgan, and we ask that you also do the same. Thank you so much for hearing us today. We appreciate you. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to come over. Appreciate it. Okay, committee, we are going to move over to the MSDE headquarters now with Laura Hyde as the budget analyst. We have Dr. Chowdhury, superintendent of the State Department of Education, Ross Goldstein, Executive Director of the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, Kate Bryan, Executive Director, Maryland Center for School Safety, and Richard Henry, Inspector General, Office of the Inspector General for Education. We're going to start with Laura Hyde.
Again, my name is Laura Hyde. I'm the budget analyst for MSDE headquarters. We're starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. You can see that the fiscal 24 budget decreases by $13 million, so approximately 4% to $333 million. This reflects net changes in the general, special, and federal fund allowances. The agency also recently reorganized, and that is discussed on page 4 of this analysis. If you'll please turn to page 11, this is Exhibit 5, overview of agency spending. So MSD headquarters budget includes the Office of the State Superintendent and other divisions, as well as 3 independent agencies budgeted under MSDE, the Maryland Center for School Safety, the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, and the Office of the Inspector General for Education. In the fiscal 24 budget, these agencies all receive approximately $3 million for administrative expenses. The remaining allocation you can see on this chart is for MSD headquarters budget, the majority of which is expenses for the Division of Rehabilitative Services, it's called DOORS, and $72 million for the Office of the State Superintendent. Turning to Exhibit 6, this is the proposed budget on page 13. So in the fiscal 2024 allowance, operating expenses decreased by $10.2 million, and some of the it's offset by increases and decreases in the budget. So some of the increases that are notable are $3 million for a school safety evaluation, $1 million for hate crimes grants, and $3.6 million for the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. Notable decreases include $14 million in savings for IT projects. If you'll please turn to page 18, this is Exhibit 7. This is funding federal funds for learning loss. So one of the most difficult problems facing the state following COVID-19 school closures was student learning loss. And this is sometimes called COVID slide. Between fiscal 2020 and 2022, a total of $907 million in federal stimulus funds was allocated specifically for programs to address learning loss for Maryland students. Some of these distributions included $351 million from the federal government directly to LEAs as part of a required set aside in the ARPA ESSER 3 funds, $271.5 million that was set aside by the Maryland General Assembly as part of Chapter 357 of 2021. This distribution was based on full-time equivalent and free and reduced price meal enrollment, $100 million from the Coronavirus Relief Fund using Title I-A percentages, and $185 million in ARPA ESSER 3 funds distributed by MSDE as part of the Maryland LEADS program, which is a non-competitive grant program designed to overcome learning loss and narrow achievement gaps. You please turn to page, this is page 19, Exhibit 8. This table shows that the program funding I was just talking about fell primarily into 3 categories, $378 million for student-focused programs, $146 million for educator-focused programs, and $32 million for local school system programs. Turning to the next page under Exhibit 9, this table shows that Maryland LEADS funds were allocated to LEAs. This shows how they would have been allocated if they were distributed using 2020 Title I-A shares. 5 LEAs with the highest percentage of Title I-A students were underfunded by a total of approximately $85 million using this comparison, with remaining LEAs receiving more than they would have using Title I-A shares. And then if you turn to Exhibit 10 on the next page, page 21, this table shows the distribution of Maryland LEADS to LEAs in actual dollars per student compared to an average per student, which would have been $214 based on the student enrollment in the calendar 21-22 school year. 16 LEAs received a higher amount than the average and 8 LEAs received less than the average. And of the 5 counties with high averages of Title I-A students, all received less than an average of $214 per student. So with these concerns in mind, DLS recommends the MSD report on the Maryland LEADS program and how the agency intends to measure the impact on student learning loss. Turning now to the second issue under personnel, this is Exhibit 11. So since fiscal 2020, MSD has had persistently high numbers of vacancies, particularly in the Office of the State Superintendent and DOORS. This problem was exacerbated by COVID-19 hiring freezes and the demands for additional staff for blueprint programs. This table shows vacancies as of January 2023, totaling 199 vacancies, not including an allowance of 13 additional regular positions and 23.5 contractual positions in the fiscal 2024 budget. So with these concerns, DLS recommends that MSD continue to report on personnel vacancies. Turning now to Exhibit 12, under audit findings, a January 2023 audit by the Office of Legislative Audits documented continuing concerns regarding MSDE's accounting practices. Some of these concerns in turn included cybersecurity, enrollment audits, grantees, and procurement issues. Even though MSDE resolved some of these matters from the previous audit, OLA find none additional concerns in this document that warrant agency action. And of particular concern is that MSDE did not ensure LEAs use Blueprint for Maryland's future funds in accordance with the state law. And so with this concern in mind, DLS recommends restrictive language for a report on the agency's progress towards the resolution of these audit findings. Turning to Exhibit 13. Under virtual learning, this is on page 29. In calendar 22 and 23, MSD headquarters was responsible for 57. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. So in the 2022 JACR response, MSD reported on efforts on virtual learning and how they can support daily instruction and college and career readiness. This table just shows a summary of those actions and costs. And DLS recommends that MSD continue to report on virtual learning. And then in Exhibit 14, this is on reporting delays on page 29. In calendar 2022 and 2023, MSD headquarters was responsible for 57 annual reports and 21 JCR reports, not including monthly reports, back of the bill requests with other agencies, and reports written by independent agencies within MSDE. Approximately 40% of the reports were not turned in on time, and so DLS asked MSD to just comment on these delays. The remainder of this analysis includes information on school safety grant funding, MFRs for the Longitudinal Data System Center and the OIGE, and audit findings. Recommended actions start on page 30, and I've covered those in the previous text. This concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Okay, any questions of the analyst? Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Chowdhury, do you want to come up? Bring your people?
Good afternoon, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for having me here. With me is Justin Dayhoff, Assistant State Superintendent, and also members of the other budget units are here as well, from the Office of Inspector General, the Maryland Center for School Safety, and then the MLDS Center, the Maryland Longitudinal Data Center. They are here as well if you have any questions for them after my testimony. Good afternoon. I am grateful to be here today and discuss the MSD headquarters budget. We embrace the opportunity to discuss the analysis and to shed light on key MSDE programs and services, particularly as we emerge from the pandemic. I want to start today on a critical component of the analysis and one we are deeply focused on at the department: staffing and vacancies. As the analysis notes, MSD began reorganization efforts this year. Dating back to the previous administration, DLS and the Assembly had recommended updating our chart of accounts and reorganizing and modernizing the structure of the department. MSD immediately embarked upon this work when I began last year, and it was much overdue. MSD had program codes that were active that corresponded to Race to the Top and other programs that have not existed in nearly a decade. I cannot begin to emphasize enough, without exaggeration, the dire state of MSD systems and operations. I am proud of the deep commitment of MSD staff as they navigate change, navigate the increase in work responsibilities associated with the Blueprint for Maryland's future, and navigate a department that lacked the systems and structures to set them up for success. As MSD did with the early childhood analysis, MSD likewise concurs that the department experienced an increase in vacancies over the last several years. Those vacancies do not come as a surprise. A state hiring freeze that lifted in December 2021, persistently low state salaries, the abolishment of special appointment positions, and the provision of contractual rather than permanent positions generated an increase in MSD vacancies. Those vacancies are felt harder at MSDE given the year-over-year reductions in MSDE permanent positions overall in the decade leading to the start of my last year, with new and increasing requirements and obligations like the blueprint for Maryland's future. Let me be clear. At peak, MSD had 256 regular PIN vacancies during my first year. Natural attrition will occur throughout the year and as part of an administrative transition. Further, the analysis does not account for the start dates of hired employees who have not yet started, but who have been hired. As of December 2022, State Board of Education meeting, MSD had 169 vacancies, 42 of which were indoors. Vacancies are trending down. MSD intends to be significantly below 100 vacancies by July 1, 2023, and subsequently close vacancies fully by fiscal year end 2024. I will highlight now what I have done to address staffing and vacancy in the short term while making sure MSD does not experience a vacancy issue again in the long term. I spoke last year at our headquarters budget hearing about my approach to business operations, the development and implementation of what I call the core services team. Collectively, core services team's roles represent the necessary central department functions upon which each program office relies to operate, and it includes an IT partner for information technology support, a talent partner for human resources support, a business services partner to support with procurement and contracts, and a planning and budget analyst for budget and finance support. This group of department offices ensures MSD programs and program teams can successfully execute their responsibilities and provide excellent service to Maryland's children and families. These teams are designed to work collaboratively together to provide hands-on customer service to MSD program staff and proactively identify and resolve needs related to human resources, contracts and procurement, information technology, and fiscal and budgetary matters. Core services teams are simultaneously designed to move work forward and serve as a fail-safe so operation workflows do not stall or fall through the cracks. I designed all core services teams to roll out last year, but hiring delayed full implementation. Core services teams, when first established, included HR, IT, procurement, and contract management service team members in some capacity. Planning and budget analysts were not yet hired. Hiring challenges are not unique to MSDE, and at the same time, personnel challenges, as my team knows, are not a reason for falling short of expectations or failing to get the work done. That being said, it has taken time and effort, and we are still trying to fully recruit and fully fill to implement our new HR structure and to begin to see the structure operate in a way and with the rigor and consistency of my vision. No doubt the core services team talent partners have become pivotal in reducing the vacancy rate. I recognize that my aim to level up student achievement, close gaps for historically underserved children, and successfully implement the blueprint for Maryland's future relies on high quality, efficient, and successful department business operations and continuity. Only through that work can we ensure staff are set up to succeed. MSD is doubling down on its recruitment efforts structurally and the tools the department uses with its recruitment teams. Prior to the current MSD administration, the department relied on posting vacancies on the State of Maryland recruitment platform, Job Apps, that has limited features to promote or highlight MSDE positions. The jobs posted on Job Apps automatically transfer to online platforms. However, MSD did not adopt any additional strategic recruitment and promotion strategies to attract candidates. Instead, the department was waiting for candidates to find us. MSD also relied on in-person job fairs that stopped for nearly 18 months during the pandemic. During this time, MSD had limited success with virtual hiring fairs. Since the end of the hiring freeze in December 2021, MSD commenced an aggressive recruitment outreach using LinkedIn, Twitter, ZipRecruiter, and EdWeek, a leading platform for education jobs, in addition to the Maryland State Recruitment Portal and Indeed.com. MSD has utilized specialty job posting platforms for hard-to-recruit positions, such as architects and accessibility specialists. Many in-person job fairs have resumed since March 2022. MSD is participating as many job fairs as possible. MSD has also taken on targeted approach to recruit and retain in particularly hard-to-staff areas. I want to acknowledge that the MSDE requested compensation study of the Division of Rehabilitation Services, or DORS, positions and the role that DBM has played in this effort. It took a year for me to get my proposal approved, but it is paying off. We appreciate DBM's direct support of one of our largest vacancy areas, the rehabilitation specialists in the DDS and the VR programs of the Division of Rehabilitation Services. Hiring indoors after the study was not as immediate as MSD wanted, due in part to the changes in the type of federal clearance associated with these positions and the new 2 to 3 month clearance time once MSD has identified a candidate for hire. I reached out to our congressional delegation and I asked for help, and those candidates are now moving through the federal process more quickly. Thanks to the off-cycle compensation study of the DOORS positions and a new grant partnership with the University of Maryland to investigate a fee-for-service model while allowing the university to directly qualify in service families, the initial programmatic data in DOORS are promising. The DOORS waitlist has stabilized. That has not happened in a very long time, and DOORS has actively reopened its Category 2 waitlist for the first time since 2018, and by the end of December 2024, had pulled all individuals off the waitlist from 2017. Moreover, these talent efforts are moving us forward. For example, as of August 2022, MSD had 115 DOOR vacancies. MSD now has 39 DOOR vacancies, including 27 positions in DOORS awaiting final federal clearance. 0 of the remaining 39 vacancies will be in the rehabilitation specialist positions. Is it as fast as I want or as we need? No, but 1.5 years into my term, MSD is moving in the right direction and the data support that progress. Similarly, as MSD discussed in its early childhood hearing, this year's department budget proposal reflects recruitment and retention efforts also targeted in early childhood, including the conversion of 15 contractual PINs to permanent positions in fiscal year 24. Because we identified licensing specialists as a particular source of higher than average turnover. Licensing specialists in the Division of Early Childhood are responsible for inspecting, credentialing, and providing assistance to childcare providers to ensure safe childcare. These positions currently have a ratio as low as 56:1 and as high as 78:1. A comprehensive comparative analysis of childcare licensing positions indicates that low compensation, as well as restrictive and outdated minimum qualifications, are the biggest issues impacting the hiring and retention of childcare licensing specialists. I proposed a 2-grade pay increase, about 12%, to employees in the licensing job series, which increases the starting salary for trainees to $60,000 starting July 1, 2023. I wish I could do it right now. This proposal has been approved by DBM and is included in MSD's fiscal year 2024 budget allowance and is being quickly put to use to market and hire. For example, MSD's most recent recruitment that concluded last week resulted in 246 qualified candidates scheduled to be interviewed for 18 licensing specialist vacancies during the last week of February. I fully expect this vacancy to be closed by either the end of this month, but definitely by March. MSD is unwilling to allow rigid staffing guidelines and position availability to slow down the work of the department. Everything that I've shared with you requires an exception and approval from DBM, but I will fight for it. MSD is growing on the move and leading the charge, and MSD is continuing to raise the bar on performance while seeking ways to reinforce and strengthen department personnel structures. MSD's recruitment and staffing initiatives and its vacancy status were reported to the General Assembly in October 2022 as required by the Joint Chairman's Report information requests. Beyond positions and our work of the core services teams and talent partners, our procurement and contracts team also went right to work. In an ideal state, this team is being proactive, working ahead all the time, but we had to attend to retroactive contracts and procurements that were not in line with state law or policy. For example, this year MSD cleared out and cleaned up 26 retroactive contracts. Now retro contracts are no more. Emergency contracts are only used in necessary and appropriate circumstances, and MSD programs have systems and processes on which to rely for sourcing support and following clear document policies. These include the provision of consistent methods for evaluating and scoring RFPs, assessing conflicts of interest, and ensuring all processes we would do it, DGS, and the Board of Public Works are followed appropriately. Most recently, and after multiple recruitments, MSD was able to hire core services teams, planning and budget analysts, and fill out most of the core services team assignments. Each core services team planning and budget analyst is responsible for ensuring and maintaining the fiscal health of a corresponding division and office and its related programs. These planning and budget analysts and supporting fiscal coordinator roles process budget alignments and transaction journal entries, conduct audit and other fiscal request research, manage program account numbers, and liaise directly with the accounting branch. So far, MSD has cleared out a backlog of 2,500 invoices, created a new chart of accounts program code structure, zero-based the department's budget, deactivate and cleared out 3,000 outdated and unused program cost account numbers, audited and updated 10 years of grant actuals as it works to get current, caught up on an overdue USDA reporting submissions, and began to correct appropriation information for federal programs that have not had appropriation updated for at least 4 years. For the first time since the start of my administration, our core services teams are fully operational and beginning to facilitate core department business operations as designed. I have our newly published guidance and service level agreements published online for reference, and I've included it as part of our written submission. Turning around systems and processes may not be flashy work, but from day one, I recognize that the core department operations are pivotal, and I am ardently working to create clear document systems, policies, processes, and infrastructure. I'm fully committed to make sure MSD runs like a well-oiled, efficient system where continued operation is not tied to a single person or role, but instead built into the fabric of MSDE as an organization. This corresponds as well to MSD's timely submission of joint chairman reports and Maryland state agency reports. The MSD acknowledges that it was behind this year, including some reports that were due from the previous administration. As the analyst noted, MSD has resolved all of the outstanding reports and has a new internal tracking system where MSD has identified and mapped out the next 12 months of reports, deadlines, and assignments to ensure timely and proper submission. Ultimately, this work cannot be implemented fast enough. These are necessary positions, roles, and systems for core business operations, and we are working diligently to fill the roles with quality talent and strive to improve MSD's business operations quality and performance in year 2 and year 3 of my administration. Parallel to my focus on operations, I was eager to get started right away on the instructional and content support of our local education agencies, including blueprint implementation. Maryland Leads was one pathway of this work, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Maryland Leads today. We respectfully, though strongly, disagree with the analyst's notes related to Maryland Leads, including the suggested that Maryland Leads was not an investment in students and in learning loss. In the words of U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, in uplifting Maryland as a leader in implementing research-driven programs with state set-aside funding in Maryland Leads, quote, "It is exciting to see Maryland leading through this new program that aims to use ARP funds in innovative ways. I'm heartened that Maryland Leads will help districts and schools both respond to the challenges posed by the pandemic and seize the opportunity our current moment offers to reimagine education. Maryland can build a better, stronger public education system for our students' future. I look forward to seeing how these efforts, including using literacy strategies grounded in the science of reading, investing in supports for educators, diversifying the educator workforce, and developing high-quality community schools can expand educational excellence and opportunity for more students in the state," end quote. First, let me be clear. MSD does not directly fund students ever. That is not how the state education agency works, as MSD funds local education agencies who then deliver the programs and services to students. Service delivery to improve student performance takes many forms, including the training of teachers and other LEA personnel. Education research points to a host of factors in school and largely out of school that contribute to a student's success. The evidence on classroom level impact is clear. The biggest school-based factor influencing students' outcomes is the adult in front of the classroom each and every day. Take, for example, the science of reading, a national movement related to literacy and student outcomes for which Maryland is already playing catch up. This Maryland Lead strategy does fund training for all K-3 teachers, special education teachers, administrators, and reading specialists to be trained in the science of reading. For context, there was one state who did not experience learning loss in early literacy. Yeah,
Can we, are you close to the end?
I am close to the end.
Okay, because we have questions that we'd like to go over with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
For context, there was one state who did not experience learning loss, Mississippi. What makes Mississippi unique? A statewide investment in the science of reading dating back to 2016 and ensuring that students are learning to read and are equipped to read by the time they complete 3rd grade so they can read to learn from there out. Likewise, if local education agencies are able to recruit and retain high quality staff, MSD students' outcomes suffer now and in the long term. Just read my last part. Again, MSDE has made Maryland Leads designed specifically to help both kickstart the blueprint and come on top of all the other big investments that have been made through ARP ESSER funds, and it is making a difference. I have included in our written testimony any additional requests, as well as some examples of what I discussed here today, including our letters with our federal congressional delegations, data collection associated with Maryland Leads program, and federal guidance specifically associated with the American Rescue Plan State set-aside discretionary programs. I skipped through some of the parts, but if your questions do relate to that, then I'll go right to it. So.
On page 29 of the analysis, MSDE should be prepared to comment on the reasons for delays in submitting JCR and mandated reports.
Yes, this department operated in silos for such a long time. Assistant state superintendents did what they wanted and no systems and processes. They submitted reports on their own and at their own time. And I have uncovered this, and that's not going to be okay going forward. It will all have a central point of contact through my legislative office and team, and it will be on time. Another error that happened is that they were not properly submitted. We submitted them, but then I learned about Sarah Albert, and she explained to me how they should be submitted exactly. So this will not happen again. I
Okay.
assure you that.
So they'll be on time next year.
They will be on time and ahead, I hope, for many.
Okay. What's the other question I saw here? I think that was my major one. Did any other members of the committee have questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have some testimony. Absolutely, sorry. Jeannie Gunthrop with the Office of Inspector General for Education and Kate Bryan from the Maryland Center for School Safety. Are you all here? Did you have some testimony?
We don't have any testimony. We're just here in the event there's questions, specifically for the center from the analysis.
Okay, any questions from anybody?
Thank you all. I have dealing with those, the audit shows that the tip line procedures need attention.
Correct. So the Safe Schools Maryland, I apologize, Kate Bryan, Executive Director, Maryland Center for School Safety. Thank you for having us. So the tip line launched in 2018. We are an incredibly small organization, so one individual oversees that entire program. Does all the back-end administration, trains the local education agencies, trains the private schools, and trains the users on the front end. So that individual has been working to draft various policies and procedures. They're just not finalized. They are drafted. We are in the process of procuring a new software for the system, which I will say is now at 4.5 years in the process. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but we are getting there, and we are assured that we assure you that they will be done prior to the deadline that we responded in the audit, which is June 30th.
That's, and I greatly appreciate that.
Mhm.
I know some people on the school safety board, but
Yes.
the issue is, when we talk about a tip line,
Mhm.
we talk about how critical it is in
Yes.
today's day and age, right? We need to move this so that there are no delays and that we can
Correct.
get that. If you need additional assistance, we just need to know about it.
Absolutely, and we appreciate the support.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I think we're good. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, I will. She was here.